would be great.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. I take it that this means we are live. I am excited. Thank you, everyone, for connecting in, for being in this space with us. I'm wondering if there's any way we can be pinned onto the screen so that Chantelle, Erica, and I can be front and center, and that you can see us and hear us, and all of those good things will be happening in this space and time if possible. That would be wonderful. Is there any way we can do that?
You're all good.
Woo, woo, that is phenomenal. Okay, and with that being said, hello. Welcome to this titillating talk. We are here with the fabulous Erica Williams and the not even second best, but just because her name came up second, the Chantelle Kirlew. And we are here to have a conversation. Yes, this is going to be a conversation, and I've been saying it, but I'm really going to say it right now. This is a really intimate space. This is a space that very few Black women have these conversations, let alone us, let alone inviting a whole audience of folks together to have this conversation with us. And today we are talking about combing through the layers, weaving together the resilience, the tragedies, and all the triumphs as well that come with this wonderful thing, these amazing tendrils that we call Black hair. And there are definitely a few things that we kind of have to do for some homework around that space as we are moving forward. But there is so much in this conversation. And what this is going to mean is we are inviting all of you to the cookout. All of y'all folks who are maybe not as melanated as we are, you guys, you are invited to this cookout. We are going to talk candid, we are going to be real, and we are going to touch some things that may touch you. So I'm just letting everybody know right now, we're going to go there. At least I plan to, and I'm hoping that my two are ready to come there with me as well. So let's start with introductions. If you wouldn't mind, I really hate doing the whole, bio blurbage. Erica and Chantelle, whoever feels like going first, tell us about yourselves. Tell us about who you two are.
Erica, I'll let you go first.
Okay. My name is Erica Williams. I am one of the operators of Erica's Embrace, which started in 2018, and that was established to attempt to fill a need and a gap in shelters across Ontario by providing Black hair care and beauty care products for Black women who were staying in these spaces. I am also a social work student at Toronto Metropolitan University, formerly Ryerson University. And I am also a family enrichment worker, currently employed at Family and Children's Services. And that's a little bit about me. And I'm really, really excited for this discussion tonight and just welcoming all of you who are watching tonight into this space so we can have some great conversations and share and learn with each other.
I love that so much. And I just want to bring into awareness, I find, Erica, you are such an amazing human with all of the things that you do. And I also want to just put forward that you have some fabulous Black hair that is also going to be about and in this conversation today as well. That's why you're so appropriate for this one. Moving it on, Chantelle, please tell us about all your fabulousness.
I am Chantelle Kirlew. I am also a facilitator of Erica's Embrace, working along, of course, alongside Erica. I'm also a BSW student in the social work field at Wilfrid Laurier. I'm only a student. That's like my full-time job right now. But speaking as Erica's former hairdresser, I can also say that she has fabulous hair.
If you guys notice, I am looking up quite a bit. It's because of the way I have a camera situated. So it's not that I'm like, well, I actually am reaching up into the universe, especially for the next parts that are coming on into this talk. But that's the reason why, if you see me looking up, because that's where I'm actually seeing the screens of those that we are talking to. So don't worry, I'm not like totally crazy. It may look like I'm looking off camera, but I'm really not. I'm just trying to make sure that I've got all things in points and balance. And with that, I'm really excited because you touched something right there, Chantelle, that I think is so imperative because, again, very often when we are working with Black hair, we tend to do our hair together. You know, we do go to the hairdresser. That is a thing for sure. I know many, many hours, and I'm sure we'll have some conversations around that. But we spend time doing each other's hair. And I'm just pointing that out because it is going to be a real part of this conversation as we move forward. And just to bring in the awareness and to set the tone for this experience today, normally we offer up a land acknowledgement for just to honor our Indigenous brothers and sisters who are, this is their land. And in honor of that experience, and also to honor this being Black History Month, I thought that I would offer up an African ceremony called Libations. And for me, we cannot have this conversation about Black hair without having these conversations and calling in the ancestors. And so this is also a participatory type event. It's a very much a ritual and a ceremony that we bring in everybody because we are literally calling in our ancestors. So those who have come before us to join our circle, because you see, these are ancient traditions. Our hair is weaving and has been interlocked, and the artistry of hair has been passed down through our ancestors. So for me, this was the time to call them in. So as I am starting this ceremony, I'm going to ask everybody to think about your ancestors. And what I mean by that is people who you in your circle who have passed. They can be relatives, they can be folks that are famous, people that you've really admired, that you know that you go to or have gone to when you've needed a moment to feel strong or to call in, because spirit is all around us. So if you can, feel free to put it into the chat if you can. And if you would, I forgot to mention this, I am sorry to all my producer people. If people put their ancestors in and they want to share them, please put it, could you give that to me in the list? And then what we can do is just call out those names as we go on. So what'll happen is you'll see through the ceremony, we will be calling out our ancestors' names as we move forward. And how the ceremony works is it is all about, again, bringing things full circle. This is an African ceremony built out of the West African traditions. And it's very interesting to see how, again, just like our hair, these traditions are intergenerational. They come and they happen again and again and again. And we often see this similar tradition showing up in ways now when a person passes and we hear some of our homeboys pouring out stuff for their homies. There's not really a difference in the way that this ceremony works. So if you would just join me, we're going to settle in and start this space. I am going to just ask everybody to settle where you are. Settle where you are. I know can't see you, but if you are somewhere where you can sit or you can just lean up for a second, just take a moment to breathe. And if you feel comfortable, just soften your eyes, Maybe close your gaze or just relax. But we always start with breath. So just take a deep breath with me. And in that breath, we're going to just take it in and we're going to exhale. Notice I just offered up just a slight sound with it. And if you feel called to follow me on the second set, just take a breath in with me as well. And this time, allow that breath to drop you into your body. You feel need for movement, whatever's coming to you right now. Great spirits, I am calling in the ancestors. I am calling all of those who have come before us. I am calling them in to circle this grand space, this talk. I am calling you in, ancestors, to bring your wisdom, to bring your joy, and to anchor this space. This is your sacredness. This is your goodness. And I am only here being able to give this talk in this moment because of you, because of your work, because of my ancestors who toiled into the field. And so I am going to offer up my first libation to all of the ancestors that were in the middle passage, Ashe, all of the ancestors who came before me, who were shucking cane in the fields, Ashe. And I forgot to mention that we will also be moving these libations with an Ashe after everyone. Calling in my ancestor, Reginald Goring, my grandfather, Ashe. Calling in my other grandmother, Dada Joseph, Ashe. Calling in my dear friend, Donna Franklin, Ashe. I am calling in my cousins, Melinda, Ashe. I am calling in my Uncle Michael, Ashe. I'm calling in my Auntie Gwen, Ashe. I am calling in all of my ancestors who struggled and fought and won, Ashe. I am calling in the divinity from my ancestry lineage that gave me this great DNA, Ashe, big teeth and all, Ashe. I am calling in all of the goodness that has come from being able to be in this presence, Ashe. I am calling in all of those whose blood were shed in war, in strife, Ashe. I am calling in all those who were newly passed, Ashe. I am calling in those who have managed to survive and thrive and pass on, Ashe. I am calling in all of the gods and goddesses of my lineage, Ashe, Oshun. I am calling you in to divine and divinate, Ashe. I'm calling in Ainana, the goddess who brings forth light and love, Ashe, womb of the universe, Ashe. I am calling in Oya, Ashe. I am calling in Yamaya, Ashe, all of the gods of my people before who we know. I am calling in all of the goodness, Ashe. And if anybody else is in the space where they would like to share, Ashe, I am bringing you into this circle. Ashe, Ashe-o. And I ask everybody to just take a deep breath with me. And let's exhale. Feel the ancestors surround us. Feel them anchor this space. We are grateful for your presence. May we do you justice in this moment. Ashe, Ashe-o. And when you are ready, just come back into center. Just come back in with me, meaning Erica and Chantelle, when you are ready. Just take a breath with me. Another one. Let's feel good now. Now the work begins. We are at the cookout. I have a few more just little homeworks that we have to do. This is our Titillating Talk, which is an event that is a monthly series. It is sponsored incredibly by some amazing organizations that are working with me right now to make sure that we are running smooth. You guys know who you are. Thank you. It couldn't be happening without this group effort. We are talking about things, and the purpose of this whole series is about talking about the things that you can't talk about anywhere else. We are going to talk about them here. And with all of that being said, I want you to know that this event is being recorded. There will be definitely a replay that will be available on YouTube at a later date as well. And captions can also be turned on if you need that. And I know I like to have captions going when I'm watching anything. It's being recorded and will be able to also be viewed on the Niagara on the Lake YouTube channel. And you can turn your captions on the right-hand corner of the screen, and you just click caption and it should come on for you. So hopefully that is available. And you know what? I think I'm done now with all the tech stuff. So let's begin this talk. Here we go. Black hair. Let's talk about it. Where do we begin?
There's so much to get into.
There really is. I was thinking we should maybe start with like an explanation. Like maybe we should start about talking about a little bit about black hair and like what's really the difference with it. Like maybe I'm going to give like a black hair 101 structural type lesson plan. Not because it's always that exciting, but you know what? In some ways it is kind of exciting. So we're going to talk about it. So here is the thing. If you've ever noticed, and I'm sure you have, black hair is really, really coily, or it potentially can be. Black hair actually comes in a range. We have numbers for our hair actually. And actually all hair is numbered. It goes from 1 to 4. And the most curly, which is what most of us who have highly textured coily hair have, is called 4C. But it also begins with like a 4, it also can start from like a 2C. Let's say a 2. 2 is normally the number where you start to see a finer curl. And for example, I'm going to end up taking off this head wrap I have on in a minute. I am 100% have 4C hair. However, Chantelle, if I was to take a guess at your texture, I'm going to go with that you're about a 3C? C3? Yeah, about a 3C? Almost was right.
I have some 4A in the middle, but
you do, eh?
Yeah, I have a lot of. Actually, I think I have some like.
I was going to say
B in the back as well.
Right? And so here's the other thing that is fascinating about black hair. You can have many of these different textures in your hair for different reasons. So Absolutely. It may look like you can have like my grandson actually has 4C hair in certain sections of his head, like first a quarter here and then like a quarter here, but in the back he's actually got like a 4B going on, and then on this side really weirdly in a patch he's got like a 4A. And what that means is that the curls are slightly less coily in those certain sections of your hair. And so if you can imagine, a 2A would be like, you know, like a wave, you know, or like, you know, those beautiful loose coils that I know I always wanted, you know, where it's just kind of that wave in it. So to be honest, many people can have just that texture, like that. If you have curly hair, you would be like a 2, and if you're not melanated but you have curly hair, that could be in that 2 range. So again, hair is complex, or more complex than we think it actually is. Then we move into the 3s, And as we see demonstrated right here with Chantelle, Chantelle has, well, 3C hair, which is where it's getting finely compacted. It really is. She got some kink going on there.
Some shrinkage. Like if you look,
Right?
it's quite,
Right?
yeah, that's a
It
lot of
definitely
shrinkage.
shrinks. It
Yeah.
definitely shrinks. And so that's also a fascinating thing. Our hair is actually made up of coils. It is very highly, highly, highly curly. Imagine a spring. So what happens is, because it's so highly coiled, and that actually has to do with the way that I'm not going to bore you with all like the chemical, you know, compounds of the bonds that the way our hair proteins meet, but depending on how those chemicals kind of cling together creates the definition for those curls. And with that, we get something called shrinkage. So even though our hair looks shorter, if we were to pull out that hair length, it actually is longer than it does seem. And that can be fun. That can be moments. I know, when it gets humid, there's some times when I'm not appreciative of it, but it's also been a place where when you have this very curly hair, it acts as an amazing conductor for energy. And it actually works to cool your hair, to cool your head, so that it will direct the sun's rays away from it, which is why you'll notice that in hot countries, when you are highly melanated, which is also a factor around keeping you, nicely ventilated. We have this beautiful built-in ability with melanation and our hair to help us keep a little bit cooler. Well, that's one of the reasons why it exists in that way. Our hair, I'm trying to think of, is there anything else like I need to like talk about in the structural ends of it that I've missed that may be of interest?
I would
Not
say
really.
maybe that your hair changes, like Black women's hair changes with different points of their life.
Yes.
And I find like the older you get, the less coily your hair is.
Very interesting. And I'm glad that you actually mentioned that, because that is an amazing thing to mention. So again, hair is affected, and you will notice this whether you are Black, whether you are Caucasian, whether you are South Asian, you will notice that your hair does change, especially as you get gray. As you get older and you become what I call a silver fox, because again, I'm going to take this off in a second, and I am worshiping the gray of my hair. But what happens is that the pigmentation in your hair actually adds and allows as well the conducting of moisture through your hair. And when that pigmentation is taken out, or it's no longer being produced, because as we get a little older and seasoned, it changes. Your hair becomes a little bit more wiry. It becomes a little bit less coiled. And so that's a symptom of that space, as well as hormonal changes can also affect the way your hair will show up as well. I don't know if anybody here, if you've ever had a baby, you will know that there are certain times when your body, you can shed a whole heap of hair at certain times. And another thing that actually is amazing about our hair is that Black hair actually, because of the coil that we have, it actually is not necessarily tubular in shape. It actually flattens a little bit and bends so that it can take that full coil formation. And so when it takes that coil formation and it does the flatten and bend, our hair doesn't reflect light the same way, right? Like if you notice, Black hair doesn't have that, I remember being a thing on a Head and Shoulders commercials as a young girl. I used to watch them, and you'd watch the sun glint off of this straight sheet of white, hair that was like 16 or 18 inches long. And we will definitely have these conversations moving forward. But I remember looking at that and going, wow, my hair don't look like that. It just doesn't.
Mhm.
And a part of that is because of the way ours is shaped. So because it has that flatter ends to accommodate the curls, it doesn't pick up the sheen in the same way. That's why our hair looks a little flatter. Or, you know, I always say it's a matte. Imagine it like a
It's a
lipstick,
matte color, yeah.
right? A MAC, you know how MAC, in my opinion, I'm sorry, don't hate me if you have another brand, but MAC makeup always made the best matte color. And that's what I don't hate, 'cause I see that, right? But if this is you, this is what I say. Our hair is a beautiful, incredible space, and we can create and do so much. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And I've talked a lot, so I'm going to just stop for a minute. Please weigh in. And as you guys are weighing in, I'm going to take this head tie off.
Well, I know for me, I would definitely say that my hair is 4C. It's the curliest of, well, Chantelle, would you agree? Because you did my hair for.
Your hair is absolutely 4C, but your hair is so like beautiful.
Oh, thank you. And right now it's in a protective style. So I'm wearing faux locks, and I'm really trying very hard to stick to styles that are more natural looking, braids, locks, things that are more representation of like my own culture. Not that I have anything against weaves or straight styles, because I absolutely do not. But I always found that for myself, wearing wigs or certain types of styles that were more Europeanized, I felt like I was hiding. I felt like I was wearing a hat, basically, wearing a hat that was definitely not myself. So that's why I've moved forward with intentionally wearing styles that are more traditional, what we would see in our community. And I think it's really important too, especially in the work that I do and being involved in the community, for young people to also to see those styles represented in different institutions that we work in, for sure.
Love that. Love that so much. Chantelle, please.
I think for me, I don't know if you remember, Erica, that I used to relax my hair. Do you remember? I always had my hair straight. We grew up in Kitchener, where it was like not very diverse. And I always had white people touching my hair and asking me, oh, when are you gonna wear box braids? Like every Black person wears box braids. It was just, yeah. So I always straightened my hair. I just started wearing my hair curly, I want to say in my early 20s. I grew out my crown. Actually, I had short hair. I had like a little pixie cut for like 10 years. This is the longest my hair has probably ever been in my entire life. And in my house, because I have children, everybody has a different hair texture. All of my kids, I have twins, and they both have different hair textures. My eldest daughter, I just started starter locks on her. So
Did you?
yeah, she started locking her hair about a month and a half ago.
Love it. I love it.
Yeah, we started with comb coils, and then we just retwisted last weekend. I did a retwist for her. So she has locks, and then the twins, I think one of my twins has like a 4A, and then the other one has like a mixture of a 4A, 4B. Their hair is different in every part of their head, just like their mother's. Yeah, everybody in my household has a different texture. Everybody's hair is very brown, except for me. I have black hair. My hair is colored right now, but I have like jet black hair. Everyone else has brown hair. So it's it's different different scales of black texture in my household, and I love it. I get to practice with different textures every single day.
I
Well,
love
not every
that
day,
so
'cause
much.
I'm lying. I do protective styles on Sunday, and they last until wash day on Sunday. So I'm lying. It's not every day.
I was gonna say, very few of us. Again, you guys are getting invited into the cookout, because you're gonna learn some secrets now about the things that we do to keep our hair going, because very few of us do our hair every day if you wear it naturally. There is a little bit more of an effort, and I don't even like phrasing it in that way, because again, you know, we're talking about the stories that come from you know, what it is to be in the expressions of our Black hair. And what I thought was so interesting from both of your stories is how different each of you have. Like, your stories with your hair are different. And the experiences around, like you were talking about, Chantelle, for example, your children and their hair. And I love the fact that you that you're locking one up, if that's the expression that they're feeling, because I'm feeling it, because I actually locked my two youngest hair when they were when did I lock my son? He was 7. And you know why? Because it was hilarious. He was the last of my last child. He was the 4th child, and I had 3 girls before him. And this boy literally was born, I'm not even exaggerating, with about 6 inches of thick thick curly hair. He came out with an afro. It was like this. I had a whole pot. There's a wives' tale in our traditional spaces about that. If you have a whole lot of heartburn, your child has a lot of hair, right? Well,
Me too.
I was dying, so that made sense to me. It really did, because he came out with this afro. So by the time he was about 4, 5, I decided to lock him up, and he wore locks until he was about 17, when he finally cut them. And my middle daughter as well, I locked her hair up when she was about 8, 7 or 8. And she also wore locks until she was about 20. And then she just recently, well, it's now been 3 years. And what's interesting about it, though, is she's almost ready to relock. This time we're going to yes, because it's a different experience, right? Of having to manage your hair.
It's
and so
completely different. Now it's out, you have to do everything to it. When it's locked, it's so beautiful and easy to control. Ayanna, I always had to do, like, she loved box braids, so I would always do box braids in her hair, but then I have to do it all the time. And since she was young, I've been begging her, like, can we just lock your hair? It's gonna look so gorgeous on you. And she would not let me do it. So she turned 14 and she's like, you know what, Mom? I really
I'm
want
ready.
one.
I'm ready.
And I was like, I was ready.
I don't even doubt it, because I'm a trained loctician as well. If you can imagine, now my hair is, you know, I've moved into a different phase of my existence, but I was actually locked for many, many years as well. I had locks for about 15 years, all the way down my bum. And, you know, they were my essence of being for a very, you know, long time. And then I came to a point where I was transitioning, and I felt the need to transition all of it. And so that's when I stepped into this hairstyle. Actually, I was blonde for a little bit. You know, blondes have more fun. I was blonde, I ain't gonna lie. I did that for a little while, but I've always worn it short, and I literally shaved my head. And traditionally, there is such power that comes from when we can release and shed. And I think about that also, Erica, when you mentioned back, you know, the idea of showing up in your authenticity, in the way that you feel like yourself, because I want to talk a little bit about what you meant by that, Erica. And I know, Chantelle, please weigh in on this one. But let's talk about good hair and bad hair. This idea that we have in the Black community about good hair and bad hair. Let's talk about it.
First,
Did you have good hair? Oh, sorry.
well,
Wait,
yeah,
Erica.
I think I have good hair now.
Right.
But if I'm thinking back to, I think it's really significant that Chantelle mentioned that her daughter is embracing locks. Because when I think about my childhood and even those young teenage years, I was not really in a place where I felt comfortable enough to take that step to have a style that was that permanent. I was still very much trying to assimilate into, you know, the white or European style of having my hair straightened, having relaxers, and the pain and embarrassment that went along with that. Because as you know, the chemicals are very harsh. We suffered a lot of burns. There was a lot of preparation that had to go into the hair before those chemicals could even be applied to the scalp, right? So I just think it's really an amazing thing that we have this this new natural hair movement. It's not really new. Let's say we're coming back to it, right?
Yeah.
Where we're now at a space where our young people are feeling confident enough to have locks and showcase their natural hair authentically. So I bravo to Iona for that. I would say definitely for myself. I feel like, you know, Kerry, it's one of those things. I feel like, especially as young Black girls, you don't really understand that your hair is anything different until you are entered into the educational system, until you are that one Black child in that classroom. You are often very quickly, I know I was very quickly reminded that I was different, but up until that point, I didn't know that my hair was any different than any other child. And that's why it's so important too, when we have, you know, the images that we see now on social media, but back then on TV, and the books that we had and the dolls that we had, they never had locks. They never had your hair, Chantelle, right? We didn't have the 4C hair in anything. So anywhere at all. And oftentimes what we wanted was to have those things that were not ever a reflection of us, right? I'm thinking back to a doll that I had, PJ Sparkle. I don't know if you guys remember that one back in like the 90s with the blonde hair and the blue eyes, you know, and bringing that to my classroom for show and tell, and then being reminded by a student the same age as me that I can't have that doll. It looks nothing like me. The color's different, the hair color's different. And from that, you know, very, very young age, knowing that I did not, or feeling, I should say, that I did not look the part, that I was different, right? So that very much is introduced to many of us and many of our kids from the time they enter into the school system. And even now, being an adult and much older, I still find myself sometimes second guessing the styles that I wear and how it's viewed. I quickly bring myself back, but that second thought is still always at the back of my mind for sure.
I can so relate. I'm a little older. I'm a little more seasoned than both of you. But, you know, I think that you're touching something, because this has also been a place that has been intergenerational. Because interestingly enough, you know, I hadn't thought about that experience that you've mentioned right there, Erica, about, you know, potentially it really hitting us when we go to school, that, you know, our hair is a bit different than other kids. I think in my experience, it was this weird juxtapose, because I have so many fond memories of being with like my cousins and my aunts and my uncles, and well, not so much the uncles, it was normally my aunts, and it was you know what we used to do, it's the weekend, you know, you have to you know, comb your hair. And so how my family used to do it is that all the aunties would just get all the kids together, because we had a whole heap there. We are a very huge family. So basically like two aunties would be like designated hair washer if mom was working or somebody was working. They got a couple of the kids. It was a Saturday and a Sunday thing, and we'd sit down and braid hair. But we would practice braiding hair. So I learned to cornrow at the knees of my aunts and uncles, and I'd learn all the family gossip, who was mad at what uncle was doing what where, and it was always the uncles. It was never the aunties, but the uncles that were just kicking up storm or not doing what they were supposed to do, whatever the drama was in the family. And I would learn to braid. And sometimes I would braid my, you know, sibling or a cousin's hair. And to be honest, I became the best braider out of the crew, just saying. But I also would practice on these blonde-haired, blue-eyed dolls. They were never, I didn't own a black doll. I don't think I did until I was maybe 12 and not that interested in dolls. So I am a child who was raised in the 70s and the 80s. It was non-existent for us. And I also have memories, which is such an interesting thing, of me and my sister. And we used to love to sing. We were both gifted, and this would be like a thing we would do together. My sister is 6 years older than me, and she didn't really have time for me except for in these moments. And I remember us being very young and or younger, and we would go into our bathroom, and we had a long mirror, so it was perfect for singing. And you'd grab your boar brush. We have a specific brush that really gets to our hair, and it was a perfect microphone. So we would use this brush, and we'd poise to sing, and we'd get ready. We'd get ready to pop that first note. And I used to love to sing Sonny and Cher, "I Got You, Babe." And I remember being poised and going, and my sister goes, "No, we're not ready yet." And I was like, "Why are we not ready?" And she goes, "You don't have Cher hair. You don't have Cher hair." So we had to she would be like, "Go grab the towel and put Cher hair on so that you could look like Cher."
Yep.
And that is a memory that I remember from being 6 years old. And then we would go on with, "I got you, babe," right? But again, it was not good enough for me to sit in my natural hair. And I was cute. I had my pigtails and they were going on, you know what I mean? But it wasn't enough. It was never enough. And so this sets the tone for us. Tell me about your experience, Chantelle.
Sorry, I was just gonna say I have pictures of myself with a towel and a headband over my hair, pretending that this towel was my hair. But my experience is a little bit different because technically in the Black community, they would consider my hair as good hair. But I was raised in Kitchener with all white people. My dad lived in Scarborough and my mom lived in Kitchener. So when I would go to Scarborough, I was like the grandchild with good hair. I was too good for everybody. I thought I was white, so on and so forth. And then when I came to Kitchener, I was the only Black kid in the school, me and my brother, and I was just too Black. I had nappy hair. So it was kind of like this in between where I just didn't know where I fit in at all. So I really wanted to be white in Kitchener, but I really wanted to be Black in Scarborough. So like I would envy my cousins who would be able to put their hair in pigtails and like have like little afros at the ends of their pigtails, whereas mine would flop. And then I would be jealous because like my hair wasn't the same as everybody else in my family. But in Kitchener, it just wasn't good enough. So it was kind of like this in-between world where I just really didn't know where to fit in. And that's why I relaxed my hair. And then my cousins started relaxing their hair. So it was like, okay, now we all have straight hair. So then I kind of fit in a little bit, but still not the same.
And I love these conversations because again, you can hear the differences around how our experiences are always a lot different. We are not monoliths as Black people. And so depending on where you come from culturally, as well as where you are socialized, who you are around also, and let's just bring this into the play, this entire socialization, the way that we are brought into our understanding of what it is to be Black is tied to our hair, not just in these moments, but historically as well. And we live with this lineage of that understanding all the way through. And for you, Erica, like, what was that like for you? Like just figuring out that space of accepting your hair. Did you accept it at that point?
I
Or did
think
the relaxer work on that?
The relaxer was going on for a number of years, and I think what was missing was the community. Now we have a community of Black individuals who are proud of their natural hair, who are proud of using protective styles that are more natural to styles that we would have. We have that community. We have it in person. We have it on social media. So it was a little easier to start looking and learning and accepting when you had a support, when you had a community that was also doing the same thing and striving to have the same things as you. So that really helped. But I find that it's still definitely a progress. When I think about other individuals that I might work with or that I'm around, like I said, it's very much a means to assimilate a lot of times. And I've often heard people, question, are weaves and straight hair and all that stuff worn to want to be white? And I don't necessarily think, I think it might be maybe a small tiny percent of it. I don't think it's so much wanting to be white. I think it's wanting to try to fit in the white way, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is a huge pressure, and I so relate to this space as well. This when we think about what is the standard of beauty, right? When you look at most magazines, and I know especially you mention this rise, this understanding of acceptance that Black women in general have been working on, because again, we are starting to claim. I think there's a reclamation happening of our sense of Black women wanting to show up and be able to celebrate our hair as well as our crowning glory. Because prior to it, this sense of what the beauty standard has been labeled, has been set by the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, white woman. That's the one who we all have, see put up front and center. They always get the guy, they're always put together. They're always the ones that make us feel, that whole saying, blondes have more fun. Even though I just as a fun fact, do you know that when you blonde your hair, it is the second most harshest chemical treatment that you can do to your hair outside of relaxer? Relaxer's the first one, then putting peroxide into your hair is the second. So it's such an interesting thing for me when I actually started really learning about hair and how these two processes are very destructive, and are very few people are actually even blonde. Right? It's more of a, it's definitely a recessive kind of trait. So it's not something, but we see a lot of blonde people that are around. And it's about this standard that has been set, not by us even, but what we consider to be beautiful. And I think, we have to talk a little bit about this, because there's also policing that happens. There is an acceptance when we are choosing to be closer to conform and look like whiteness. And I know in my particular instance, and I'd be curious to hear when you guys actually relaxed your hair for the first time, because processes have grown since, since I was a child. And when I was a child, we went from, pressing our hair, and then the only thing that was available was really relaxers at that time. And, you could braid, and there was a time in the 70s where we were really claiming Blackness. So there was a time where the Afro became a political symbol, where you would stand up and, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud, and so the Afro was prevalent. I remember being about 6. I think I was 6, and my mother got my hair braided, and I got it beaded at the end. Oh my gosh, did I like nothing was better than when I would hear the clatter and the clink of those beads, and they were I still remember it. They were red and white, and we would hold them up with foil at the end. So it wasn't always the greatest way when the foil would be put in, because sometimes the foil would come out and then the beads would fall. But that's beside the point. I remember feeling proud in that moment. And then about a year later, I think it was 7 or 8, when my mother relaxed my hair for the first time. And when I think about that now, knowing, and we'll go into what is relaxer, but knowing how as a young child, I was putting the harshest chemical. So the main composition in relaxer is actually the very same chemical that is used in Drano. I'm just gonna let people take that for a minute and let it sink in. The stuff you throw down your sink to unplug all that gucky whatever, God knows what's in that. Black women have been putting on their heads for generations to
It
conform,
burns.
to conform.
I think that really speaks. It speaks to the extreme conditioning and brainwashing that our people have been subject to since, being stolen from Africa, basically,
Yeah.
being brought over here, that journey, and then, which is very typical of colonization, having the language beaten out of you and your head shaved, right? And if we look at other communities as well, it's very similar. Having your head shaved or cut as a means to strip you of your identity and who you are, right? And then reinforcing a different type of belief that you're not good as how you are, so you must take these extreme measures, such as the relaxer, to fit in. And then at the end of the day, ladies, what is really interesting is even with all of those chemicals in your hair, you're still not quite the part,
Yeah.
right? We
Sure.
can do all of those things, but we're still not quite the part to fit in those spaces yet. So all of that has still been done, all of that hurt and all of that trauma, and you're still not good enough is the bottom line.
And it comes with so many of these are the layers, right? Like the layers that come up from the relaxing that, we're not even, we haven't even hit that part where it becomes about the physical, as you mentioned before, Chantelle. Chantelle, I think you mentioned it too. Erica, I know you mentioned the sense of, getting the chemical burns, because again, so the process of relaxing is, when you have a full virgin head of hair, you've got to put it all the way in. But no matter what, depending on the strength, which is based upon, or should be based upon, your texture of hair, these chemicals come in like a light, and then a medium, and then there was like the one that I had to throw in my head, which was like a heavier version. And again, just imagine how corrosive this is if you can pour that same chemical down your sink to unclog your sink or your toilet or whatever it is that has that clog. We would put this thing on your head, and you shouldn't have worn it for longer than 20 minutes. But if you really want to make sure you got that bone straight, tell me I'm wrong. If you wanted it bone straight, sometimes you got to leave that relaxer in a little bit longer. And so every 6 weeks, we would have to touch it up too, because of course our hair grows. So you would do that full head the first time, but every 6 weeks afterwards, because it chemically changes your hair forever. Right. So when that chemical change is done, you have your natural, where it's going to meet that chemical. And what happens is if you don't relax, there's a weaker space between the bond of the the part that's natural versus the part that's relaxed. And that unfortunately can break your hair as well too. So even growing out, when you choose to go do that, normally you got to do the big cut, but I'm sure we'll talk about that space as well. When I just want to mention this really quickly, because I want to get to you, Erica. I really, sorry, Chantelle, I want to hear about what your experience once you straightened your hair was. But I just want to say this one really quickly. There was a recent space that happened where there was a Twitter thread that went out because there used to be a group called, a video called Just For Me, or sorry, not a video. There was a particular relaxer that was marketed to young children. So I know my first relaxer was Just For Me. And
Just for me.
right? Just for me. I remember the commercial. It was a really hot commercial, right? And the girl's hair, oh my goodness, the girl's hair in that on the box covers, they were all age and their hair was like slicked and straight. And I know every girl wanted that. I know I did. And there was a recent thread asking about the Just For Me girls from the 90s. Where were they today? And interesting, they showed up on the thread. And what came out of that conversation was that none of those girls actually had relaxed their hair. They all had like 3C, 3C and above, like so 3C hair. And what is important to know about that is that if you have a hair texture that's like a 3 or like a 2C, you know, even going into like 3A, you don't necessarily need to use a relaxer. You can get bone straight simply by doing a press and curl, which is adding heat, which chemically breaks down the bond, but it's a more temporary thing until your hair gets damaged, and then it's just damaged and it will stay straight. But that's another story. But again, you can treat it with just heat. And it was like a mind blow for many of us girls when well, my little girl anyway, when I found out that I was chasing a dream that was never mine, and those girls didn't even have it. It was a shock to my almost 50-year-old sensibilities now. And so I want you to like just breathe in and think about it if you're in the audience. And I know there are many of us in the audience who are melanated, and this is our truth, to recognize the extents and the lengths that we are going to take in a modicum of beauty that's not ours. And there are huge health risks attached to this as well. Very recently, within the last 5 years, it's been suspected for a while, but in the last 5 years, they have been linking now the chemical relaxers with cancer and with a huge onslaught of uterine fibroids in Black women. That has been something that we know and that has happened. And now they're actually linking this chemical process that we've done over and over again. And for some women, they've done it for like 50 years. And then now we're recognizing there's this detriment to our health. And I am sorry I took so much space and time up. Chantelle, please tell us your story.
About relaxing?
Yes,
I
a little
think
bit about
somebody
that.
had asked in the Q&A
Oh.
What qualifies as good hair in the Black community.
Yeah.
So I'll just answer that. So good hair would
Yes.
be hair that is less textured, looser curls, hair that's easier to manage.
Right. Yep.
Just hair that
Straight.
is
Straight.
straighter. The closer you are to straighter, the better your hair is in the Black community. That would be considered good hair.
Yeah.
And internalized racism.
Yeah, internalized racism, basically. But my experience with relaxers, I remember I started relaxing my hair. My mom was against it. She would not let me relax my hair, but she also did not know how to do hair very well. So I begged and pleaded. She moved me to Kitchener. I wanted to be like everybody else and fit in. please, please, please let me relax my hair. I came from Scarborough where there was other people who looked like me, and I was not used to this space. So she finally let me relax my hair. And I remember coming out of this relaxer the next day, peeling scabs off my scalp, brushing them down my hair because your scalp would burn from the chemicals. I remember going with Erica to get her hair relaxed, and like the scabs that we both would have on our scalps, it's absurd. Like the things that we did to our hair. I could never do that to my child. I mean, not that they knew any, like parents didn't know any better. And I didn't know until I was about 16 or 17 about flat irons or like a blowout or anything
there weren't
like
flat there weren't flat irons until
no,
about
there weren't flat irons.
right. There weren't any. We
No,
had
it was
pressing
hot
comb.
comb. It was
right?
hot comb or
and did you get
relaxer.
did your ears ever burn? Tell me, who did you ever get your ear burned? Because I
Yes.
know that was
Like I think I have
sorry,
permanent
Mom.
scars on my ears.
No, I
right?
think you might have.
Sorry, Mom. Sorry,
I
but
have permanent scars on my ears from hot combs, permanent damage to my scalp from relaxers. Like it's crazy. It's
and
insane.
yet it was there even a thought to not though?
No, I would have never.
Right?
It was automatic. I had to have my hair straight. And not even just that, if you think about now in a professional setting, like black hair is not accepted. You have to have your hair in some sort of like assimilated style, like buns or, straight hair. Even braids in some contexts are not seen as professional. It depends on where you're working. So Black women don't win anyway. We just don't win. Even
Very
now in
much so.
2023.
Very
And
much so.
it's very much going back to, the policing of, Black bodies, the policing of Black hair, right? That's all very much connected, right? Especially, I know we've talked about it many times, Chantelle, I believe it's called Tian laws, right?
I think it's Tignons.
Tignon laws.
Yep.
In the the early 18th century, when we had so many Black women who at this time, and this is why I have another problem with the whole feminist movement, but that's another story. But just to touch very briefly, Black women and white women were very much, and this is where the conflict comes from, right? Because in slavery, we had a whole demographic of women who were abused, who were raped, who produced biracial children. Who were the product of rape and had to live with enslaved Black women. And a lot of times, these children, not a lot of times, but most of the time, they were not accepted, right, by the father, who a lot of times was the slave master, or it could have been any
daddy.
Could have been any white man actually back then, because once again, our bodies were police and they were not our own, right? And that will tie into hair as well. But this law was created because there were so many biracial individuals that people were having a hard time telling who was Black and who wasn't Black. Yep. So again, a law was created to police us. And we're looking at like maybe 1798, 1800, around there. So that law was created, that you had to use the scarves to wrap your hair to let people know that you had a percentage of African in you, because they did not want to disrupt the social order, right? And at this time, these women were the competition of white women. And another thing that was happening too was they did not want white men to be able to take these women as wives, and then risk having a child that ended up being African, right? Or having some part of African in them. So the policing of the bodies has continued, and it's very much connects to what we see today when we have individuals who want to touch our hair. Can I touch your hair? Or maybe the question isn't even asked. The hand, you see the hand movements coming at you and you're dodging. This happened to me just last year at work. Somebody tried to reach out and touch my hair, and it reinforces this belief that our bodies are not our own, just like in slavery, right? That you have the right to touch our bodies and have have access to her body. So that's where that comes from. And that's why it's so very much not allowed. It's not something that you should ever do or want to do. I don't know. I've never walked down the street and wanted to touch,
just gone
so,
up.
I've never wanted to do that. I don't know about
I
y'all,
don't
but
know.
it's not
I was a
something that
hairdresser and I still don't want to go and touch random people's hair. But this happened to me, to my child last year at the bus driver. Ayanna, my eldest daughter, she had her hair in braids. She walked on the bus and the bus driver, who was a man, touched her hair. And he was like, "Oh, your hair is so nice." I had to go to the bus stop afterwards and politely, because I don't want to be the angry Black woman, tell him, "Do not ever touch my child's hair. Would you go and touch another white child's hair? Like, that is assault. You should not be touching the children on your bus's hair."
Such a
I was
violation.
livid. It was such a
Absolutely.
violation. And she felt violated. And she was only 12 years
Absolutely.
old at the time. She felt violated. Like, what would make this white man believe that he could come and touch my hair because he's my bus
Ah,
driver?
Right.
and
And that
and
goes back to that
livid.
piece again.
oh, I'm feeling this. You know why too? I just heard a couple weeks ago a story of a young Black man, who was in a classroom where at the beginning of Black History Month in history, where yes, like
The irony.
the irony,
The
where
irony.
the teacher sat that the young man down. He's young, and put his hands in his hair and was playing with it, talking about how it felt. And I think often about what that is for a child. I mean, again, he's a young man, but he's still a child. He's still singled out in an entire classroom, and that terror of not just being assaulted, but knowing that how you are perceived as a Black man, right? How you show up in that way, and what does it mean for others to polarize you in that way? And it was a white teacher, and
And I just
so
think,
yeah.
sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I just think that could never be a white child. Do you think that a white child could be sitting there and his white teacher would come and touch his hair? That's assault.
And
That's absolutely assault.
and it would have been like, don't touch me. But again, with us, there is like I think it's something to be said that there is like a memory we have. And if you ever get a chance to read Dr. June, what is her name? It's called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome is the name of the book.
Dr. Joy DeGruy.
Dr. Joy, it's Joy DeGruy, is it?
I believe it's DeGruy,
Really?
Dr. Joy DeGruy, but she has, I have that book, amazing.
Yep.
I suggest it's a read.
It is a
everyone.
definite read for anybody who is interested. And she was one of the very first people that I've heard talk about this epigenetic memory that we all share in, where again, your survival was based upon your ability to conform, to not stand out, to obey. You were your livelihood, your very not even your livelihood, for even let that's a stretch. Let's talk about your very fabric of being was at the hands of others. So we very often learn to suppress. We learn to smile, even if we're seething inside, and accept. And what I think we're starting to see is we're beginning to unpack it a little bit now. We're beginning to recognize, like, again, I look at my journey, and I was a weave queen. And I always loved hair, but I only got into hairstyling in the 2012s. I think that's actually when I went to hairstyling school. I was braiding and doing all of that far beyond. And in fact, when I moved out here, I came out here to become a writer, but I ended up getting into hair because it was such a rare thing to find anybody who had their hair done or braided. So I ended up doing hair. But what was interesting to me was I remember, like, when we started learning about weaves even, and weaves came out Oh my goodness, I was in grade 9, and I remember, you know who you are. We had a girlfriend who, at that time, to get a weave was like $1,000. Okay, like it was like a big money. So we all like pooled our cash, and we said we're gonna send one girl to go figure out her hair and then get her hair done, and then we're gonna like look and see. So we went with her to the hairstylist, and I think about this often. That hairdresser must have been like, "What is wrong with these girls?" Because there was like 4 of us, and I'm right at her elbow, and I'm just watching her do the original braid. This, like, there's a braid pattern that goes on. So whenever you see a Black woman and she has a weave on, and most of the time now we're actually seeing wigs that Black women are wearing, lace front wigs that you got to know how to lay down, right? You got to know how to do that. That's an art form on its own. But at the time it was weaves. And I remember, watching, because there's a cornrow pattern. So our own hair is cornrowed down. And then literally we stitched on these long stretches of weave. And if I don't have any handy, unfortunately, but we would have these long pieces of straight hair that we would stitch onto our own hair. And I remember just sitting at her elbow watching, trying to see the type of stitch that she did, how did she put it in? What was exactly the braid pattern? And then we went home and mimicked it. We went home and learned how to do it, because that was the next phase of this being. And so for me, I would go through like a cycle, and I don't know if you guys did the same thing, but I would do this cycle where I would, let's say I would start with relaxer. But as you can imagine, relaxer is harsh. And what would happen is about every 2 years or so, and as I got older, it was even more frequent than that. But every 2 years or so, your hair would just drop off, right? Because it's a very harsh chemical. And if you didn't get, your relaxer at the right time or whatever, and especially as your hair gets down towards the ends, what happens is that relaxer, your hair ends thin out. So your hair looks what we call scanty. I don't know if y'all have that, right? You have the scanty hair. And so, right? So we would do, for me, I would end up going, I hate this. I am going to like cut my hair. So I would grow it out a little bit, and I'd cut my hair off, and then I would braid it. And I would braid it till it got a little bit of length. Then after it was braided for a little while, I would go into my weave, because I could lay out a fly weave. Let me tell you, I could lay one down though. I would lay out my fly weave, and that was always a good time, because then I could get share hair. Because I would always say, if I'm going to weave my head, I'm going to go big or go home, right? So I'd go like 26-inch hair. Like, I'm buying all of this. Like, I'm like that long. And then, I get my hair back because it's in a protective style. And that's what a weave would be, or when you braid, it's called a protective style for Black hair, because again, our hair is a little bit drier just because of the nature of it. When you have all these curls, right? Your hair produces at the scalp something, you have these glands called sebaceous glands, and these sebaceous glands produce oils. So I always found it hilarious when I went to hair school, and I realized that a lot of, white girls are complaining because, after a day or two, they got to wash their hair because them sebaceous glands, the oils are all just coming through their hair. And for us, what happens is the sebaceous glands produce oil, but it doesn't make it through all those curls, right? Because we got curls, so it don't move the same. And so our hair is drier naturally. And what I found was that once I left my hair alone, it would grow and just do what it needed to do. And then, what I would do? I'd relax it. And so this cycle was vicious. And I think it was after my last child, and I was also going through a divorce. And, a trigger alert on this one. Well, I wasn't actually in the divorce yet. I was pregnant, and my ex, let's just say, took a razor to my head and took off my hair. And I remember in that moment, I was like devastated, devastated. But at the same time, it was uniquely free. I literally, because there was no guard on that razor, so it was zero. And so I was balding. And as it took the hair off my head, I had to sit in a space where I could either wear it or I could do something else, which was, by that point I had wigs, but I chose to wear it. I chose to stand in my baldness, and I went to work, and I worked for a financial agency. But again, I just breathed into that and said, you know what? It was cold too, because it was February. Actually, it was this month. So it was cold. But I just had a little beanie that I would put on and I wore it. And that was something that actually became what was a devastating moment. I managed to empower myself with. And I moved forward with that. And that was like the beginning of me choosing to go to locks. Because I think about it was about maybe maybe a year later, I started locking my hair for the first time. It didn't work the first time because comb coils and too much gunk in them made my hair too soft, but it took a little while. Um, so again, it's a journey. What our hair, I know for me, it's been a journey of coming into being and finally just claiming myself, because it was a radical act when I chose to even go to the locks, right? Um, the locks, even I got backlash from family when I went and decided to. My mother and my grandmother and my aunties, because remember there were five, like I got like huge family, and they all live within like 2 seconds of each other. They were shocked. How dare I? But again, I was always the rebel, so it worked. You know, if anybody was going to break it, it would be me. Uh, and they were all not happy for a while. But you know what I did find? After about 4 years and my locks were looking good, I got whispers and asks for people to lock up. And even to this day, my beautiful dear sister is still rocking because she has a different hair texture than mine. She's got justice hair, my son's, like she has a ton of it, and her locks are all the way down her butt. And I locked her hair up about, it's now almost 20 years. And so if you're out there and you are finding that, you know, this conversation's hitting home, I want to offer you some grace. I want to just bring up that this is a space of a journey. And I think that that's a big portion of it. You know, what do you guys think about it when you think about Black hair? Has it been a journey for you?
I definitely think it's been a journey for me.
Mm-hmm.
I am definitely more proud
Mm-hmm.
now than I was growing up. But like I said, I feel like it's because we have a community, and you know, our hair is. I mean, it's just hair. When we think about hair, it's just hair for most people. But for people of African descent, hair is very much a connection to our ancestors. It's a spiritual connection. A lot of people believe it's our strength, right? Our hair is our strength, which is why I know in the Caribbean, a lot of people have an issue with cutting your hair, right? We have, a lot of people who are wearing, our Rasta people who wear their locks, they believe that's their strength. And don't ask them to cut it because they're never going to do that. But if they do, it's like you said, Kerry, it's a rebirth, right? It's like a starting over, a starting fresh, And I think it's, interesting, Chantelle, when you spoke about the situation with your daughter in the school. We have a lot of issues in the school system, and I feel like the teachers that we have, and I understand, especially here in Niagara, I never had a Black teacher.
I never did either. Me
Neither
neither.
had one. The first time I had a Black professor was when I started my university journey. That was 2019.
And think about that.
And a lot of times the teachers are the ones who are also perpetuating these types of incidents. I know my daughter will go to school and say, oh, my teacher was touching my hair, or my teacher touched my hair, and then other children felt that they could also, do the same thing. And I think that's really a huge, it's a huge problem, definitely. When we look at schools today, hairstyling programs and hairstyling schools, what's being taught about our hair. Chantelle, I know you attended a college for hairstyling.
Me too. Yep.
What did they learn you about our hair?
Nothing.
So I went to
I-
hair school in 2014.
Mhm.
We used the Milady textbook, which
Yep.
is, I guess, the typical textbook. And there was 4 pages
Abs-
of relaxing hair.
Yes.
That was it. That's it.
That's
In
it.
the book must have had 200 pages in it. There was 4 pages
Yep.
about relaxing hair. So the most damaging thing that you can do to a Black woman's hair, 4 pages, nothing else. Nothing about texture, nothing about moisture, nothing about anything. Luckily, I had a teacher who really wanted to be inclusive. So she found YouTube videos to teach us.
Oh, I love that.
Right?
Really?
She was amazing. My teacher was amazing. She found YouTube videos, and she didn't even ask me, thank God, because they want to ask the first Black person in the room. She didn't ask me to teach the class. She found the resources herself and taught the class about Black hair.
Wow.
Yeah, she was amazing. Shout out to, I don't remember her name, Terry. But she was amazing. But it's ridiculous. Like, how do we have these Black hair or these hair books for hairdressers, and they teach you nothing about Black hair? So when you come across a Black person whose hair is completely different from yours,
They
you know
don't
how to do anything with it.
don't do it. Just don't. Like that. Just don't do Black hair if you're not trained and understand it. That was what I understood, was that they just don't do it. And
No, that's not true.
right.
So in the
And
70s, my mother went to a hair salon because she wanted straight hair. And a white hairdresser was like, you got curls? I could do this. All her hair was gone. My mom's hair was down to her waist. All her hair was gone. She cried and cried for days. This was before I was born. But I've seen the pictures. She left with an afro like this.
I think this is another reason why it's important, though, to have people with lived experience
Absolutely.
offering the knowledge and the teachings in these classrooms. And while it's okay to learn, like taking the knowledge and then not, acknowledging where it came from, problematic. We need to
very
have
much so.
Black teachers in these spaces to teach these
Right.
services as well, and make sure they're paid accordingly, instead of just, like I said, taking the knowledge and not acknowledging, where it comes from. People
Right.
are still shocked to find out that there are laws being created in the states that are very discriminatory, saying that you cannot wear box braids, you cannot wear locks, you cannot have your hair has to be a certain length, it cannot, all these things basically that are discriminatory
And
against
barriers.
our hair grows out of our head. And I thought I saw a question.
Yeah, there's several
There's a
questions
few.
that are coming up that we have to get to.
Yeah,
Which one were you talking about, Erica?
I thought I saw one about how to start the natural hair journey.
Yes, that was one that is actually in our sheet. And I want to start opening it up soon too, because again, this is a conversation that literally we've only touched the surface. Like I kept thinking, oh, I want to bring up this point, and then I'm like, no, because we're on a time span, and I know that we have been talking for a little bit. So I think it's fair to say that I really hope that from this conversation, you're getting a taste or a touch of what the layers are for Black women and for even Black men who have and wear our textured hair. And you can understand how, just like for all women and all men, our hair is our crowning glory. But for us, it becomes very complicated. it becomes a very complicated experience of being able to stand in what that means for us. And so much so that many of us don't even know how to look after our natural hair in its natural state, which is a part of why, you know, when we go into this question around embracing, you know, that spot, embracing what it is to have a natural hair journey. Erica, do you want to, like, you brought up the question, do you want to, I kind of honor it and maybe give some advice as to how that space is? I'm looking for the question again. See, I got to take my glasses down. Hold on a little bit.
Well, I would say for sure, finding your circle. So surrounding
Yes.
yourself with people, whether that's in person or online, whether it's following groups, joining groups that are about the celebration of natural hair and Black hair. I would say that's definitely a start to it, because it's so important to have that support, because it's already so, it can be so isolating being a Black individual, especially in spaces that are predominantly white. You know, we go to work, we go to school, we have to exist to survive. And it's almost like when you come home, you can kind of, you know, exhale and be yourself again. You have to go in these spaces, but you always have to try to, you know, mediate with yourself about how Black you can actually be, to show up in these spaces. So I would say for sure, getting a hairstyle that, you know, even if you can, just a headband and have your natural hair out. Wear it in a bun, wear your Afro textured hair in a bun, and then surrounding yourself with like-minded people, like I said, groups, supports, so that can help to, you know, really reinforce that,
Love it.
you know, that.
Great advice. And I would just offer and add that one of the beautiful things that we have for that, because again, if you live in spaces that are about an hour and a half outside of the GTA like we do, it may be harder to find those spaces. I know, like I myself, I used to I had a huge practice for a while, and I'm no longer braiding to the same extent that I am. But one of the things that this talk has really brought up for me is that we need to be, again, teaching these traditions. I think that, you know, stay tuned, but I'm really thinking about offering and, you know, Chantelle, now that I know, you know, now that I know some things, Chantelle, maybe this is a conversation we can have around teaching some hair braiding classes. Because what I found is also very important is empowering yourself to understand our hair and figure out what works for you with your hair. You know, our hair care process, and the question actually was, how do I start my journey of accepting my Black hair and the bias I feel toward it? So I want to address that piece around the bias. And the first thing is to give you some grace. Give yourself some grace, because as we've mentioned in this conversation, you have been inundated. We've all been told that our hair is troublesome and nappy and all of those things. But when you truly take that breath and learn about what it is your hair needs. And for us, normally what it is that I mentioned that we have dryness. So it's about adding moisture. And please, let me just let you all know, to add moisture, it means water. Like you got to add water first. Then when you oil, we need as well because of that dryness, but the oil seals in the moisture. So it's very important to pair the two. Recognize as well that the seasons affect your hair, and how you stand up. Like, so in the winter time, it's not a bad thing to put your hair in a protective style. And the reason why is because we know that during the winter months, it's even more dry. It's a very dry period of time. You notice even, I didn't even notice, but white folk can get ashy too. Like if you're not putting, like Like we are very much about, adding oils even to our melanation, right? I didn't know that, but white folk can get oil, ashy too. And what I mean by ashy is that your skin gets very dry and can scale. And so again, you have to add moisture and oil to those spaces like your skin. But to put your hair in a protective style is very helpful. If you are going to use a product that you want and you're buying something over the counter, I'm very much an advocate for using only natural products in my hair. I don't use anything that I can't make, to be honest. And so I'm going to give two recommendations. One is do not shampoo as frequently. We as Black people, especially in the wintertime, you need to keep your hair clean. So please do not please wash your hair, please. But wash your hair and do what is called a kopu. And what a kopu is using more conditioner with like just a drop of shampoo. Yeah, get a little lather, but use the conditioner mostly to keep adding that moisture into your hair. So that's a tip that I would give, and it will help you when you're done. Like, don't wash all of it out. Like, leave a tiny little bit of that conditioner in, and maybe then if you add in a little bit of oil, and just you can twist your hair into like 4 big plaits, and that will allow you to allow like some pullage, or like the shrinkage may be a little bit less, and then the moisture goes a long way from allowing your hair to not feel so nappy or hard in that space. And what would be the other thing? I'm going to stop there. Did I cover? That's a major one. Start small. Start with little things. I love the headband. That to me is a great idea. Chantelle, what do you think?
I just wanted to talk about the bias
Yeah.
portion as well. I think that
Mhm.
another thing for you to
Mhm.
do if you have a bias against your hair is just kind of really do some critical self-reflection and like understand where this bias is coming from.
Mhm.
Because it's not coming from your natural hair. It's coming from the outside world. It's coming from like the colonized world. It's coming from like Eurocentric ideals.
Mhm.
So really sit down with yourself and understand, why do I have this
Why?
bias against something that grows
Mhm.
out of my own head?
Love it.
You
Love
know?
it.
Where did that come from?
Yes.
Yeah,
Knowledge,
exactly.
and that self-awareness gives you the strength to move into the knowledge,
Yeah,
because
and then educate yourself about your hair and educate yourself about your own texture, because you may have a different texture.
mm,
Learn the different textures of hair. There's many YouTube videos you can look
oh,
at. There's many platforms you can go to. As
yes.
Erica said, social media, you can go on Pinterest. There's so many easy, natural styles that you can
Mhm.
find. Every time I do my kids' hair, I go on Pinterest and find a style. If I don't feel like being creative that day, I go on Pinterest and I find something because it's simple. And they'll teach you
Love it.
step by step,
Yep.
like I learned how to braid on my friend Erica's hair. That's how I learned how to braid. You
Did
just have to
you?
practice, right? You practice,
Right.
yeah. But really doing that self-reflection and understanding where this bias is coming from is going to take you a long way. Because if you don't understand why you have a bias, you may never get over it.
It's hard.
Yeah,
And
it's that hurdle that you have to jump over.
yeah, and just know that I often say when I'm grappling with those feelings of who, not feeling good enough, because this is we're starting with hair, but we know that this is something we internalize as Black women, and
Mhm.
that we take it into more than just our hair. That's just a crown, but it sinks really hard into the bottom. And so I always say that whatever created you won a lottery of life. You won a lottery to be here, and that can't be a mistake. And so recognize that your goodness is all through you and even in your hair. It truly is. And let's move to the next couple of questions. I think because we got a whole lot here. I didn't
I
even realize
know.
I'm like, oh my goodness, we got quite a few. I want to get to The first one, there's a question here from Adiola, and I am not going to try and butcher your last name, but I am grateful to you for your question because I think this is such an important one. You mentioned and you gave a backstory, so thank you for that as well. I am a Yoruba girl born in Canada. My parents immigrated here in '99. I traveled to Nigeria with them in 2022, and I noticed that all of the ladies had their hair in protective stylings at all times, not one afro. Natural hair. Wait, oh, wait, sorry. I shared this observation with my mother, and she said, that's our culture. Afros, natural hairs and twist outs, that's a North American thing. Africans do not do that. While I subscribe to this dynamic, I subscribe much of this dynamic to colonialism. Surely the story is more complex than that. I am curious about it, especially as a young woman who transitioned from relaxed hair to natural hair by herself at the age of 18. Do you folks have any insights on the trajectory of the non-acceptance of natural hair in African countries? How can this generalized African perspective be included in the narratives of Black hair? I think this one's interesting. What do you guys think?
It's very interesting, actually, and I think she already kind of touched on a little bit of it, colonization, right? And the fact that we are all descendant of the, people like African diaspora, right? And very much our intent in wearing afros and wearing our hair natural is very much a form of resistance. It's a form of resistance against living in a society that continuously tells you that you have to be a certain way to exist. In Africa, wearing the protective styles, it's something that that she explained that it's just naturally done, but the experience is not the same experience, and the resistance is slightly different. Like I said, we are trying to resist white supremacy. We are trying to resist assimilation, and we do that by wearing our hair natural as it grows out of our heads, with protective styles included. Chantelle, I don't know if you want to jump in and share what your thoughts are on that.
I think I would go a little bit further and say that the natural hair movement is absolutely like a form of resistance, but I think it's also a form of we can do it better. Because the natural hair movement, women are learning how, because we didn't always know how to take care of our hair. We're now learning how to take care of our hair, learning how to grow our hair naturally so that our hair can also be down our back and natural without being straight, without being damaged, without being chemically altered. We can still grow our hair, because before, Black women were known to have very short hair. We couldn't grow our hair. We didn't know how to take care of our hair. But now we're reclaiming that. And we are learning how to take care of our hair, learning the proper oils, learning that our hair absolutely needs a lot more moisture, which starts with water and not Vaseline.
Yeah, right.
Just something that, like, when you're younger and they teach you, like, oh, put some Vaseline in your hair, absolutely do not put that.
Or Blue Magic, which is Vaseline just colored blue.
Absolutely, do not put that in your hair, please.
Nothing petroleum based. Nothing
petroleum based. Absolutely not. That will clog your pores and stop your hair from growing. But yeah, I think that it's a form of resistance and a form of saying, we can take care of ourselves. We can grow our hair long. We can do anything. For Black women, we could do anything.
We don't have to necessarily wear the protective style. You work inside your offices and to be a part of your circles. We're going to wear it as it grows from our head, because we're going to resist your, colonial and white supremacy ways, basically. And I think while it's also important to note that maybe in Africa, the experience might be slightly different, because like I said, we are from the diaspora, right? There are still other issues with internalized racism that I
Racism.
see in Africa, throughout the
Mhm.
Caribbean, with things like
Mhm.
skin bleaching and skin lightening. So you might not necessarily be wearing the afros, but you are still attempting to slightly assimilate by using these products to lighten your
100%.
skin. But that's a whole other conversation.
I was gonna say
It's still showing up very much so.
it
Yeah.
still does. And dare I say, relaxers and still being and showing up in a very proper style or a very proper way of being. And I'm gonna even relate it back to my West Indian background, because what I notice about that is there are some strengths, absolutely, but I think there's a something we don't talk about very often is there's very much a difference in the experience of somebody in the diaspora, especially in North America, where you heard us talk about, you mentioned it, and I know it was my experience too, Erica, and Chantelle, you said it as well, where you didn't have a Black teacher. You went through education, you went through your entire world where you did not see yourself reflected back in any positioning of power. And so that's a very different experience than like when I would go to Antigua, or I'm imagining in Africa, my mother never had anybody but a Black teacher. All of the politicians, for the most part, shopkeepers, parish owner, like, parishioners, friends, everybody looked like them. So when they came here as immigrants, there was never been a question to their value, because everything that they've ever seen is themselves reflected back. And so there is an acceptance of hair because that's all you would have known, right? There would be a way of being that makes more sense there. And there is, when we talk about what that is it brings it back to this idea that the Black experience, so even though we're all affected by colonialism and this capitalist system, we all have different senses and takes in that space. And no, Black folks, we are not a monolith. Our experiences are different. But thank you for that incredible question. I know that we're getting some also coming up in the chat too. I'm just going through the ones that we have here. Somebody is asking about how to properly care for my little biracial sister's hair and how to cut it properly without strengthening it. Chantelle, do you want to take that one?
Okay, so I'm going to assume, and I don't like assuming things, but
Right.
if your sister is biracial, then she probably has like a curlier, like a looser curl texture. I would not suggest you to cut it on your own. I would suggest you to go to a salon that specializes in diva curl cuts or in curly cuts. That's what I do. I don't cut my own hair. I go to a salon that specializes in curly cuts, and they'll be able to help you in that way. Cutting your sister's hair on your own, I don't suggest that anybody cuts hair.
No self-cutting.
Yeah, if they're not a hairdresser, I just don't suggest it, because if you end up with lopsided hair, or your little sister ends up with lopsided hair, it's just going to be, okay, I'm going to cut it and even it out, and then I'm going to cut it and even it out, and then the little sister has no hair. So I suggest looking for a salon that specializes in diva curl cuts. They're amazing. She can wear her hair curly, but that will keep her hair from being damaged from the straightening and blow drying and relaxing, or not relaxing, sorry, we don't relax in this day and age, but flat ironing, which is still damaging. Heat is still damaging to curly hair, because the curlier your hair is, the easier it is to knot. So curls, as Kerry had said, when your hair is curly, it's flat, but it also knots. So the more you heat it, the easier the knots break, and that's where your hair breaks, from the knot. So you don't want to add heat if you can avoid it, but absolutely go to a hair salon that specializes in deep curl cuts.
No self-cutting. I even say this to women who have who have straight hair. I've always even said that, because again, I don't know how long you spent, Chantelle. We spent how many months in hair school, and then we need how many hours to get our license?
2-year process, yeah.
Right? We man, like arm strength and practicing and knowing angles, like it is really a technique. And then especially when you have curly hair, you have to compensate for like there when you cut, you have to kind of compensate for the shrinkage if you're going to cut. Wait, let me even just stop. Just don't do it. And or if you think about it, cut hair dry. Cut black hair
Always dry.
Always dry. Please, because again, you have to account for the shrinkage. It's a lot easier to do it that way if you have to, but please don't. Just don't.
And then another thing is, like, you don't know how many different hair textures are in her hair. So you definitely have to like incorporate the different textures when you're pulling to cut. So if it shrinks and you have like a straighter hair on this side, it's going to be longer. You just please don't do it.
Yeah, just don't if you don't have to. Are we okay for going a little bit longer? We have a few more questions. Just tell me how we're feeling in the chat, or do you want us to maybe come back? I know we've been going for a little bit, so I just want to check in very briefly. Are we okay with just answering these final questions? And especially you, both of you, Chantelle and Erica, are you both feeling okay with us answering these questions?
I'm okay.
No, I'm fine. I'm
okay.
worried more about the folks at home.
Yeah, for sure. This definitely needs to be a we're trying to combat.
Yeah, like an extended talk. Absolutely.
Yeah. There's just too much to discuss in one session for sure.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much that we haven't even touched on, like history.
Yeah, so much we could have gone into that we have not even begun to touch the service. We haven't even done the topic, all of its service here. Can you please explain when we qualify having good hair or bad hair? So we did cover that one. You all have beautiful hair to me, and I just want to say thank you for that comment. Let me go up here. As a South Asian woman, I'm here to hold space, learn, and check my own bias privilege to stay accountable and to call out anybody who thinks they're entitled to violate Black bodies in this way. And so I want to just say thank you to that one. I guess that was more of a comment. There's a conversation in here as well that I think I'm celebrating this as well, that they're saying that at Niagara College, they are working on change. Lots of respect for what I'm hearing and learning from tonight, because I know that I didn't go to Niagara College. I went to the other hair college out here. And to be honest, I taught with intention. I taught Black hair. I genuinely wanted because it just was something that was advised just not, right? And I respect that. I respected it, but I made sure that the stylists who were in my year had some understanding of what it was to have Black hair and how to work with it. No cutting, but how to work with it in a better way. Because again, it's harder sometimes when you don't have access to the information. And at least, providing a 101 was a beginning at the time. But I'm grateful to hear that the programs are starting to recognize that we are visible. Another thing we didn't even touch upon is how much Black women in particular, there is a $1 billion industry that is based around Black hair that we do not control. But again, that is a topic for another time. We are avid and very faithful with our hair. So we're a good market. We're going to come back to you if you know what you're doing. So yeah, that was a wonderful thing. I'm just reading some more of the comments. We've got another one saying, thank you for this space. I would love to see the conversation continue, maybe a Black girl meetup, because we have a lot to unpack. I think that is fabulous. And it's such a truth. Just lots of love coming up. Lots of love. Wow. We got another comment going. Thank you for being in this space with us this evening. We will be, oh wait, no, that was us commenting back. The question was, I know Black people are not a monolith, but is it common these days for Black people to adjust their hair for the comfort of white people? I think we've answered that one. I think so. Do you guys have anything you want to comment around that?
I think we have answered that one. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
We've talked about, this is a question. What is the one thing you wished stylists knew before you sat down in their hair? In their chair, sorry, not in their hair, in their chair.
Erica, do you want to answer that one?
How about how to do my hair? This comes back to I would just say it comes back to privilege, right? We had a whole heap of people saying they don't have privilege, they don't understand what white privilege is. This is a prime example, so listen up. If you can walk into a hair salon
Any hair salon
and get your hair done, you have privilege, because we cannot do that. We have to go out and hunt for someone that can actually do our hair. We can't just walk into any salon, especially here in Niagara, and get our hair done. That's a privilege. But let me tell you something, as an individual with straight hair or a white individual, you can walk into our Black salons and you can get your hair done. So what does that tell you? It tells you that you are in a position, or hairstylists are in a position, the ones who are already practicing, the ones who are in school, once you can do your own hair, once you can do white hair, you are good to go. You can be profitable. You don't have to worry about learning to, treat, cut, comb, afro textured hair, and you can still operate your business. You don't, but we have to learn how to maintain our hair and all its versatile ways. And we also have to learn how to do white hair as well. So if you didn't understand privilege, there's some
perfect
privilege.
example. I love that, Erica. Thank you for pointing that out. And also, now that you brought that to the forefront, somebody said, thank you so much for sharing your stories and histories. Does Erica's Embrace have a donation page?
Yes, we do. We have a donation page on our website, ericasembrace.com.
Please donate. Please give, because again, when you are, as you've heard, you get an impression that it's a little more complicated for us. And if you are in a position where you've had to run, or you're just not, it's not accessible for you, it's really not accessible for you. So what Erica and what Chantelle does in their work of making sure that products are available when it's impossible to even think about anything else, you have no idea what a comfort that is. So give whatever you can. It is so appreciated. It's hard to find, even when you're in good times and good spaces. Trust me, good products are hard to find. Appreciate you. I think we are coming to the end. Any final thoughts, words of wisdom that each of you would like to give? I'm ready to hear, and I'm sure everybody else is as well.
I actually think there was one more question, Kerry.
Oh, did I miss one?
Yeah, hair loss, how to prevent it or slow it down.
Oh. What are your thoughts on it? For me, hair loss. Two things. Moisture. Key piece. Moisture. If another little tidbit, easy thing to do. If you are sleeping on like cotton sheets, please get satin or even polyester. The dollar store sells them. Polyester pillowcases, and or find yourself a hair bonnet. Like when you fall asleep and your hair is like laid out on one of those cotton pillows, that will surely break your hair. It's like we don't have much oil, and it's like a hair absorber. It will just, it's like a sponge. It'll up whatever you have in your hair. So another handy tidbit is recognizing that a key thing, if you get nothing else out of this, that moisture is pivotal. So even if you run water through your hair and then you seal it with the conditioners or the curl activators or whatever oils that you add to it, that seals the moisture in. So you can't just put the oil in without the other, because those two things, what'll happen is you clog the pores, your hair is not healthy, it becomes a vicious cycle. And recognize that your hair is beautiful. It really is. It just needs a little tender, loving care. But once you figure it out, okay, that's not even true. You'll figure it out and you may have to switch it up. You do.
Again and again.
And again and again. But it's always an adventure. It's always an adventure as you're moving through it. And be proud that you're taking that step to figure it out. Any hair tips about preventing?
So when I think of hair loss, I think of black castor oil. I think of aloe
that
vera,
too.
and I think of rosemary water. So if you boil rosemary in water and add a few drops of black castor oil and some aloe vera, that will help with hair loss. But it also depends on the hair loss that you're talking about. If you're talking about alopecia or stress,
Right.
It really just depends on the type of hair loss that we're talking about. But black castor oil, miracles.
It is
Aloe
miracles.
vera, miracles. Even rose water.
Miracles.
And water. Yeah, those are the 4 things that I would suggest to try.
Yeah.
But again, if it's like alopecia, you're just gonna have to wait for it back.
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons, and maybe this is an idea as well, because again, products are its own, like that's a conversation on its own.
Yeah.
Again, I do not use anything but natural products in my hair. That has also been a part of my journey. I all the things that have been deliciously named by Chantelle are powerful. I'm also an avid lover of coconut oil. Coconut oil has some major properties that's just amazing for melanated people, period, as well as shea butter. Those are the 2 things that I use, even on my skin. But that again is another conversation that we have to have at its rudimentary cause. Just take the couple of tips we've given you, and maybe what we do is have another conversation. That this, to me, I see we could have a whole series here on this alone, because that's a big piece. Right? That's a piece. Just saying. Anybody else? Any questions that I may have missed?
I think that's it.
I think that's it. I think we are ready to wrap this up. Anybody's got any final words from this amazing, amazing conversation?
I just want to thank everybody for listening. I think this was an amazing talk. I feel privileged to be here today. I feel like I got a little bit off my chest.
Yeah.
Got some things to say. But absolutely, I would love to do this again.
Yeah, we definitely will. I think that, again, as we've rolled through this, I know I didn't even, we had a script, like not a script, but we had like some points to mention, and we didn't even get to all of them. And so I think that there's so much more than I even began to recognize in this conversation. And I too just want to thank everybody. Erica, you got anything you want to add?
I just, I'm grateful that we were able to have this space to have this discussion and to have so many people be a part of it and offer their questions and their comments and support for this conversation. And just to remember that hair, it's not just hair for us. It's spiritual, and connects us to a history, a culture, our ancestors. And it's definitely a conversation I would love to come back to. And I hope that you all will also come back to it if it's something that we can do in the future. Definitely needs more than one session.
Mhm.
So thank you, everyone.
That was said beautifully. And I think that this is not the end, but it definitely is for tonight. Thank you so much for coming out, for joining us, for listening, for holding the space, for allowing us to bring the ancestors in, because this is such a pivotal time, I think, as well. There is a reclamation that is happening around these spaces, and I am so excited that you chose to witness and be a part of it. Till we meet till next time. Thank you. Bye.